Within League of Legends, there's an archetype of champions that, while small, has been a consistent threat throughout the game's timeline, seemingly regardless of the metagame, owing to being capable of potentially the highest amount of abuse in the game: AD Assassins, more specifically mid-lane AD Assassins. Thankfully, they aren't that massive in number, but the ones who do exist perennially rank among the most difficult cast members to deal with in the game: Talon, Zed, and Qiyana. These three champions have a storied history for their extreme carry potential, progressively becoming more and more effective the higher up you go. Despite not being hyper carries, many consider them to have the ability to do so. Talon at one point held the honor for the highest number of First Bloods out of any champion, being responsible for a quarter of all of them at the height of his career. Riot August went on record to admit the Val's team intentionally keeps Zed underpowered for the sole purpose of mitigating how oppressive he can be. But what about Qiyana? What's her shtick? Though she currently registers, I think, about a 4.5% pick rate in Masters at the time of writing this video, Qiyana notoriously struggles to reach anywhere close to that amount below the Apex tiers. While she managed an impressive 10% across the board throughout seasons 11 and 12, since then she's become a pretty rare sight, which of course caught my attention. Though she's by no means Yorick or Kog'Maw levels of unpopular, for today's final in place I wanted to analyze Qiyana to find out what exactly happened that made her go from a double-digit presence to a relatively obscure pick, especially considering her class. Before we get into the video though, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Marvel Strike Force. They're celebrating their 7th anniversary, so if you're looking for something new to pick up for this spring, now's a good time to try it out. Marvel Strike Force is a mobile squad RPG filled with every single character from the Marvel Universe, heroes and villains. You can arrange your party, level them up, and gear them out to participate in 5v5 battles in either PvE or PvP. Like I said, they're celebrating their 7th anniversary, and to promote that, they're doing a massive content launch and special new user campaign to go along with it. So this month you can be on the lookout for the new Starjammers team, which includes a couple members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, like Rocket and Groot. Marvel Strike Force also plans to release Nightcrawler and Cyclops for free too through their new promo code 7, available until June 30th, which also comes with 500 power cores and 5 premium orbs too. All of these characters can be thrown into a variety of campaigns like the story mode, raids, PvP against other players, alliance wars, and more, and the game is constantly updated to ensure there's always something you can check out. If you're interested in doing so, be sure to use my QR code on screen or link in the description below, and remember to use the promo code 7 for a free Nightcrawler and Cyclops. Thanks again to Marvel Strike Force for sponsoring the video, but for now, back on top. The reason assassins are consistently popular is because they carry the perfect storm when it comes to solo queue. High mobility, high damage, low reliance on teammates, and can improve in performance both micromechanically and macromechanically. The two central ways to counter assassins are disruption and coordination. Disruption is primarily fielded by tank champions who can make use of their bulk to withstand the front-loaded burst of an assassin, and then subsequently use their crowd control to disable their pressure for the rest of their team to then capitalize on it. Coordination is an effort mandated by the entire team rotating and responding as a unit to be mindful of flanks, establish vision control, and to fight in such a way so as to protect their carries in every which way possible. Given the coordination you find in solo queue, or lack thereof, as well as tanks being far less popular in solo queue due to the natural reliance on the team, it's the perfect environment for the assassin class to thrive in. However, it becomes exceedingly difficult for assassins to get anything going when faced against a team with either a large amount of dueling champions or the aforementioned disruption and coordination. While some may have some workarounds, none were as proficient at handling any possible situation that could come their way than Qiyana. What set her apart from her predecessors though? The fact that she could blow up 5 people just as easily as she could blow up 1. Assassins are primarily known for their single target DPS. Qiyana, on the other hand, was able to nuke the entire enemy team when allowed sufficient preparation. Thanks to Elemental Wrath being an AoE skill shot with a decent amount of coverage, Qiyana was able to throw 2 highly damaging attacks one after another: Elemental Wrath, Terror Shape to reset with the terrain Q, then throwing it again. When used in tandem with her ultimate's massive coverage, Qiyana had enough kill strength to potentially burst all 5 members of the enemy team in the right scenario, making her the first teamfight assassin in the game, notably teamfight AD Assassin. AD Assassins were balanced by the fact that they could only realistically shut down one person: Kha'Zix, Rengar, Talon, AD Shaco, Zed, even Blue King to an extent. To enable this, they were afforded highly effective situational items that other classes wish they could have, like Edge of Night, Zerilda's Grudge, and Serpent's Fang, all of which Qiyana made liberal use of. Moreover, they could still purchase regular bruiser items if and when appropriate, giving them arguably the highest build flexibility in the game. So when you had an AD assassin who could build all these utility items like slowing and shield breaking, and then apply all of them against multiple members of the enemy team, Qiyana had, or should I say still has, insane carry potential, CC chaining and wasting teams without any assistance. If she could neutralize the main vulnerability of assassins, what exactly was she lacking in that made her not as popular as seemingly less capable members like Zed and Talon? Undoubtedly, the biggest headwind facing Qiyana is that her incredible 1v9 carry potential is counterbalanced by the equally incredible mechanical execution and presence of mind required to actually pull it off consistently. Most of the time, the hardest part of playing an assassin is knowing when to go in and then knowing how to get out once you do go in. Their burst combos are fairly straightforward though. For Talon, you dive in with Q, throw W, pop ultimate to get the final attack, then auto to finish them off. Zed's combos tend to be more elaborate, but usually you try to slow them down with a Shadow E and then line up your shurikens to hopefully land all of them. Kha'Zix and Rengar jump on their targets and then use their point and click Qs to do 90% of the target's max health in a split second. Qiyana's rotation, on the other hand, is exceedingly more challenging. Not only is it possible for her to miss every single attack in light of her Qs being skill shots, but there are so many more layers to her assassination combo that can also radically change depending on where you are. For a class meant to be able to one-tap their target regardless of who, what, where, and when, Qiyana depends on so many different factors. Her assassination combo can change based on if you're fighting in the river, in lane, in jungle. It depends on where she is in relation to her opponent, and more importantly where her opponent is in relation to surrounding terrain and other entities, because their Q deals less damage to enemies beyond the first, meaning Qiyana can lose a large portion of her damage if her opponent just stands behind a minion or another champion. Assuming every possible factor is accounted for, there's still the challenge of landing the actual combo. Qiyana's passive and W both have properties that discourage you from carelessly mashing your face on the keyboard, much in the same way Riven does. You need to weave auto attacks in between ability uses, automatically presenting your opponent a chance to react and use whatever defensive measures they have at their disposal. Not only that, but you have to pick up different terror shape elements to reset her passive cooldown, which is a big chunk of her DPS. If you pick up two of the same elements back to back, you don't reset your passive on your target. Throughout all of this, you have to land 2 skill shots and also orchestrate the fight so that you can shove the enemy champion into a wall for the AoE stun on her ultimate. Qiyana's total assassination combo without the stun takes uncomfortably long to execute for an assassin, altogether creating windows of opportunity for her to fail said combo. Putting it simply, in exchange for having the ability to nuke the entire enemy team, not only is it very difficult to do, but it's also difficult to nuke one person as well, making her skill floor prohibitively onerous to meet. On paper, she's meant to be an assassin, but in practice, I'd wager she plays more like a skirmisher or a diver. In some cases, yes, you just want to bum rush the opponent and try to 100 to 0 them. Other cases, you want to harass them with a couple green Qs ahead of time before all-inning them, since Qiyana's terrain Q deals 60% more damage against enemies below half health. So many different factors to consider, not only before you do your combo, but during your combo as well. Missing even one component might result in them surviving enough to fight back. And unlike other assassins, Qiyana lacks an easy way out, bringing us to the second problem. Lending further credence to my theory that Qiyana's closer to a diver than assassin is the fact that she's the only one in the game who lacks a means of defense. Though they hope they never have to rely on it, every assassin comes with at least one ability that can be used to respond against retaliation in the event their initial combo doesn't finish the job. Zed can blink back to a shadow after casting Deathmark. Rengar can either root enemies with an empowered E to run away, or use W to heal any damage he takes. Kha'Zix can go invisible to reposition himself and buy time for his cooldowns to come back up. Akali can do the same or temporarily disengage before diving right back in with either E or ultimate. Talon can parkour out just like he parkours in. Even Nefiri, who's notorious for lacking a means of escaping on her own, at least comes packed with a heal on her Q and a shield on her ultimate to face tank anything she might be struck with. Qiyana has nothing. She has no healing, no shielding, no on-target ability, no return course. Once you get in there, if you fail to kill your target, you're easily at risk of exploding yourself unless you're good at kiting. And remember, like I said, even if you line up the perfect set of circumstances and execute your combo correctly, Qiyana has one of the slowest 100 to 0 combos out of any assassin, giving her target plenty of time to fight back. The two ways she can get herself out to safety are to use a brush or river Q, the former giving her temporary stealth to try and juke her targets, and the latter coming with a short-lasting route to lock down pursuers. But taking either of them means you forfeit her terrain Q, which is essential for her overall damage. Most other assassins have their defensive ability without paying a cost to their DPS. Choosing to blink back to your Deathmark shadow doesn't make Zed's Deathmark any less painful. Talon's wall parkour has no bearing on his DPS. Qiyana, on the other hand, has to choose between killing or surviving. If she wants one, she forfeits the other. The problem is, most of the time she can't afford to prioritize survival if she wants to burst her targets. Qiyana's reliance on a terrain Q is not for comfort purposes, it's imperative that she does. Without it, her front-loaded damage profile is actually quite low. Assassins typically carry enough DPS to burst a squishy target twice over. If they have 2000 health, an assassin usually has enough firepower to do 4000, giving them a lenient margin for error if in the event they miss an ability or have to burn their defensive option early. How many times we see Zed miss around his shurikens only for him to still kill you anyway, or Talon missing the return trip of Rake and still nuking you. Rengar using Ferocity on empowered W to cleanse but he still one-taps you. That's because they usually have a lot more raw power factored into their kit. Guess who doesn't? Qiyana. Qiyana's base damage and AD scaling per ability are lower to counterbalance the number of different sources of damage in her kit. She can use her passive twice, Q twice, WE and ultimate, 7 sources, but the more DPS sources you have, the more it becomes necessary to land all of them. For the sake of argument, let's compare Talon with Qiyana. As of version 15.4, combining all of Talon's attacks together, the maximum damage he can do at level 18 is 1127.5 base plus 690% bonus AD. Qiyana, on the other hand, when combining everything, does 1264 base plus 529% bonus AD, and also 10% max health damage. This assumes you do the full combo perfectly and proc the extra damage on a W 3 times, roughly around the same damage as Talon if not slightly less, except Talon's combo is close to unavoidable and can happen anywhere instantaneously. Qiyana needs to factor her position, her opponent's position, and any potential chance the opponent can defend themselves during the far longer ability rotation time. Once more, the trade-off is that she can potentially apply most of her kit to multiple members of the enemy team, but if your goal was to play for a team fight, I don't think Qiyana would have been your first choice. You might as well play someone like Yone, Diana, Yasuo, or Riven who has more consistent teamfight pressure. Qiyana's main problem in relation to her peers is that her pressure range is far too wide with not a high enough ceiling for it to justify the time and effort required to play her for most people, especially when you can master someone else in a fraction of the time with only marginally less output. In her defense, she wasn't always like this. Qiyana used to be like her other assassin friends who could blow you up and then blow you up again if by some miracle stroke of luck you healed back to full. Due to her extreme dominance during the Mythic item era, Qiyana received nerfs targeted specifically at the need to land everything. A few years back, she was able to one-shot her combo just from her ability usage alone, no need to even multiple auto attacks. But then there were 3 key patches that tightened her margin for error, first being 11.22, lowering the bonus AD scaling of her Audacity by 20%. Edge of Ixtal would get the 15% lost AD back in a future patch. Then 12.15, Royal Privilege lost 15% bonus AD scaling, which when accounting for the 12.4% earlier that year taking 10% already, meant that her passive lost almost half its AD scaling, forcing it to attack twice with it to make up the difference. Finally 14.16, even though Qiyana got her Q scaling back, her ultimate got slammed with a massive nerf, losing 45% bonus AD scaling to it. Altogether, these nerfs greatly diminished Qiyana's front-loaded damage, you know, the thing assassins are known for. Extending an assassin's attack rotation by even half a second is a big deal. Half a second longer gives you time to barrier, your tank support time to peel her off you, it gives you time to flash an important attack, or it even gives you time to just use any defensive abilities you might have. If at any point Qiyana were to miss an ability, she would basically be at the mercy of her team bailing her out. That's assuming she has a chance to reach a point of assassination to begin with. Assassins are not known for their strong laning phase. The last thing they want to do is take on someone without the element of chaos or surprise. But even then, they usually have a way to handle laning phase in some capacity. Naafiri can poke with dark and daggers, Talon and Zed can wave clear with their respective abilities. Others might have a shield or some way to mitigate damage. Qiyana, on the other hand, does not. First off, her level 1 is arguably the weakest in the game for a carry champion. Her W can't function optimally without a Q, and vice versa. Then she also has a poor neutral game. Grass Q can be helpful against any auto attackers, but the base damage on it is so low, she has to throw like 10 of them before it poses a threat early game. One more issue is that Qiyana's damage doesn't really ramp up until you get a few more points in her kit. Assassins can typically start looking for trouble as soon as they acquire their ultimate, but the Ixtal's early game is so weak, she gets bullied by anyone with the neutral game or all-in game. Jungle Qiyana's not much better either. Predator junglers can hunt her down and waste her before she gets a chance to scale, and her clear speed is suboptimal until Tiamat. She just doesn't have enough tools to survive the early game comfortably, and with how snowbally the game has become, players don't want to have to sit through 15 minutes of punishment for only 5 to 10% better performance than someone else in the same class. So after taking all this into consideration, why does Qiyana average the highest win rate of all 3 assassins at high elo? Simple, payoff is payoff, even if arbitrarily it's only 10% more than what Talon, Rengar, Naafiri, Kha'Zix, Zed, and so on can do. It doesn't change the fact that 10% is 10%. Qiyana is one of the only 2 assassins in the game who can wombo combo the entire enemy team by herself. Mastery over her different elemental Qs can also make her much more flexible than her peers, even if it's at the expense of damage. She has a lot of utility in her kit overall, from the AoE crowd control on her River Q to the full knockback and stun on her ultimate. So unlike other assassins who usually just have to play in one singular way, Qiyana is a lot more dynamic. Obviously that means it takes a trained eye to know what part of her is the best course of action at what time, but the payoff is definitely there. It's kinda like a Azir, where if you do get over that skill floor, there is a payoff. It's just most players would much rather pick someone more accessible and consistent. In essence, those who do play Qiyana are those who are really good at her, which is why she has a measurably higher win rate. You don't have noobs tanking her win rate the same way they do for Talon or Zed. Personally, I'm glad she's not popular. I was there when Qiyana had a 15% pick rate and I never want to go back. Watch any Beifong montage and you'll see what peak performance Qiyana looks like. She better be hard to pick up if that's what you can do on her. Anyway, what do you guys think of Qiyana? Do you agree or disagree with my points? Feel free to share in the comments. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.